Call the meeting to order at 7:01. Open session public meetings are subject to being videotaped. Your image and voice may be recorded. We have a 7:15 meeting with the Finance Committee that will last until 8 o'clock. So I'd ask if there was anybody here with something that they'd like to bring up with us. We could do it then, so you don't have to hang around for 45 minutes if you...
I think they're at number B.
Quick appointment, I think.
Yep. Go ahead.
Come on, Mike. We got stuff for the Finance Committee, so don't sit on it.
Okay.
But tonight is for an appointment for a part-time police officer.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Malley. Michael was a part-time officer here up until 2011.
Yeah.
He left for some personal reasons then. So we're looking to fill a void. Actually, this was actually an opening that was created when Carl Matthew left, and had never been filled. But Mike kind of presents a unique opportunity for us, as he is a full-time dispatcher in Marlboro. So he brings lots of skill, and we've had lots of turmoil and turnover in the dispatch ranks recently. But he also is completely trained in the IMC software, which we are going to be transitioning to.
Oh, great.
So he brings a lot of tools to the table for us, so we actually get a lot of bang for the buck for his service. So what I'm asking is that you appoint Mike tonight as a part-time officer.
That sounds great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
back. Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Now, are you still going to be working in Marlboro?
Yes. Yes, my full-time job.
Okay.
All right. Any comments or questions?
No.
No, beyond my comment welcoming you back, I don't have any either. So I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
There you go. That's for your... Thank you.
Okay, quick and easy.
Quick and
Excellent.
easy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks
Mike's parents that
coming
came to
All right.
see us tonight.
Nice to meet you, too.
Yeah.
Nice to be here. Nice to meet you all.
It's good to be back. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you have something you'd like to raise with us? As I say, we don't want to keep you hanging out for 45 minutes once we...
No, I was just curious to hear any discussion on the sort of hill issue.
Is there going to be any?
I don't believe so.
No, we're still within that sort of 14-day period in which we really didn't expect any...
It's on the agenda, so I...
Yeah, it's just as miscellaneous correspondence, just that there was an email about it, but it's nothing, no action.
You want to, I can...
3E.
Which one is it?
3E.
3E?
Kennel license?
Oh, that's the one about
The
title
kennels.
to the property and so...
No.
No.
The kennel license.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Was that the one between the real estate?
Yes,
Okay, yeah. That was only some correspondence went back and forth indicating that the status of the property may be sort of less than permanent with the residents, and whether that should be taken into account when and if we're asked to reconsider the license. The property, as I'm sure you're aware, is in some process of foreclosure. And so a citizen had written in pointing this out to us. Walter commented on it, saying, yeah, this is something that we should consider, when and if we're asked to unsuspend the license. And that was it. I mean, there are no... Okay?
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Very well, thank you.
So, but no action. I'd forgotten that email was in there. How are you, Walter?
How are you?
Not too bad.
Sorry, had dinner a little late.
That's fine. I'm usually the one that's getting in a little bit
It's
late,
okay, we
so.
just appointed a police.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We still have a few minutes, so I guess we'll just pick up. Minutes of the meeting. Are people ready to vote on these? I know you just got back. There's quite a raft of them.
Well, some of them are, we've been waiting 3 weeks to do these?
yeah.
Yeah, I can vote on.
Okay. All right. We have September 8th. That was an open session.
14.
2014.
2014.
And it was
Yes,
just Walter and I.
Yes. Yeah, I figured it wasn't 2014, correct. Yes, not 2015.
No.
Okay, so let's go through. What I'll try to do is do these in 3 motions, because it seems, well, all right, there is one in which only Walter and Judy were present. That's September 8th, 2014. I take a motion to approve.
I so move.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Well, only that, you know, I skimmed them, but it didn't, I wasn't confident that I would know and remember if there's any changes in it anyway. But
Okay.
it's, we should get them.
Okay,
Second.
all right. No other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm abstaining because I wasn't present. Then next, we have September 15th, open session and executive session in this case, and September 22nd, open session. Those were 3 meetings at which myself and Walter were the only ones present, so I will take a motion to approve those.
So move.
I'll second those. Any comments or questions besides a ditto of what you said before?
Right.
Okay. Hearing none, then I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Next, we have September 29th, 2014, and October 6th, 2014. At those 2 meetings, it was myself and Judy who were present. So I'll take a motion to approve. These are just open session meetings for those 2 dates, September 29th and
moved.
October 6th. Second, any comments or questions?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next, we have October 14th, 2014, open and executive session. October 20th, 2014, open session. October 20th, 2014, executive session. October 27th, 2014, open session. All 3 were present for those meetings. I would take a motion to approve those minutes.
So move.
2 lines in.
Yeah.
Second.
Till June
Okay, any further comments or questions on those?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Judy heard that red stands out more on TV than any other color.
Oh, okay.
I remember, if you ever do a, you're ever gonna have like a TV thing, if you're doing a legislative thing, or going to find, wear a red shirt, because they.
There you go, you're right up front.
Looks good.
Okay.
Okay, well, all right. The next issue is,
Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Are we all up, where are we with minutes more recently? Are we up to speed? Are we right up to speed?
listed.
Mary, are we?
They're listed there, Walter, on that sheet. I couldn't.
But
tell
we
you
just
off the top of
voted
my head.
those, right?
Yep, so at
Yeah.
the bottom, do you have the cover sheet with that?
It's underneath this
Sorry.
part
oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
We have to be prepared October 13th, 2015, January 19th, and 25th, and February 1st, February 10th, and February 16th. So we are, we're pretty much, we had that one in October, but otherwise we're, caught up to
So have we
the
voted
middle of
on those?
January. They're to be prepared. Everything else has been voted.
Okay. After, I would really like to have the minutes of a meeting voted on at the next meeting, only because my memory is so poor. In the future, I probably will abstain if the minutes are more. A couple of weeks is all right, but it's getting to be too long, and I don't...
Well, I think we're actually catching up.
If we're
at this
catching
point,
up,
yeah.
good. Well, after that, hopefully we can catch up and stay caught up.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think we may just go into FinCom because I think I'd like to have a little more discussion than just 2 minutes on the town administrator thing, just so you and I have conversed. I don't know how much you've talked to other people about it, so you guys can come on up. Yes, indeed.
Do we need to vote on the RFT before?
Oh, look.
It doesn't have to be before, but it's just part of this appointment.
So there's a request. There's a.
Oh, yes, for reserve fund transfer. It's in the appointments book here. Yep.
I can email this to you as well.
Do you want to do the reserve fund transfer quickly before we get into
Yeah.
into the rest of this? Because otherwise, I have a habit of forgetting these things. So. All right.
Sure.
Okay.
Gives me a moment to pass these out.
Okay.
Because they're not stapled.
We have a reserve fund transfer request in the amount of $3,700 and $3,718. And this is to pay the wages of the accounting clerk for the remainder of the year. She's been averaging 22 to 29 hours per week. She'll be cutting back for the remainder of the year to 20 hours. We've had payroll issues that have caused, considerable amount of extra work and a
That's on the
6-month
first page.
delay. We also had some personnel issues in which things were really sitting on June's desk and not able to be handed off. So she's requesting this amount basically to fund 20 hours a week for the rest of the fiscal year for her help.
Right, so this is 50% more than was originally budgeted.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's another 50% asked for next year's budget.
Yes.
And so that this is not then just because we had some payroll glitches at one point of the year, because we're talking about doubling the
I
budget
think,
for next year.
yes, I think it is recognizing that there's, a lot of work, a lot of more attention that has to be paid to these things. We have really zero backup, so that if June was gone before, there was just no possibility of, she just had to do everything. But we will talk about
Right.
those when we talk about the broader issue when we get into the accountant's
Yeah,
budget.
yeah.
And I know she's coming in on Wednesday. I'm sort of her liaison. Unfortunately, I'm going to be in New York on Wednesday evening, so I'm not going to be able to come and talk to you.
Yeah.
So we'll talk in a little more detail with that, and I think Judy may come in on Wednesday for
Yeah, and when you
further
first
discussions.
made this request, we of course approved 1,000, so there was at least enough to continue paying it until we could have this meeting at least.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if there's others here who have other questions on this request or not.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it has, the whole, obviously, I think most immediately, the reason that she can't sort of eke out the year, and I think it's pertinent to this request.
Right.
The issues that we had with payroll, and, of course, Dennis was out for a while, and June was filling in, and she's just gotten quite behind. So this really is separate and really is more connected to that. And as I say, we will talk about the broader issues when we talk about the budget for next year.
Okay.
Okay? Let's take a vote of the Board of Selectmen to request it.
I so move.
Second.
Any further comments or questions on the Selectmen's?
Well, we're all aware of the problems that have occurred from help and everything else, and it's a very unusual and awkward and difficult year for her, and I think it's justified for this year, to finish the year.
And I will say, I mean, it was difficult. She's very willing to work hard, but it's always harder to face a personnel problem and deal with it. And I was actually very, very pleased, and I thought it showed, maturation and everything in the office that she dealt with that. She dealt with it in a disciplined and an appropriate way. So, any other comments or questions from the selectmen? All right, hearing none, take a vote to request it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I think our official is just, we're meeting with Selectmen, so I think we might have to wait till Wednesday to approve it ourselves.
yeah.
But we have a meeting Wednesday, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, now we can go on to the main event. Thanks.
So what I've passed out in front of you really is, what the handouts at town meeting look like as of right now. Especially the first page or two, there's still lots of zeros on it because the FinCom recommended budget hasn't happened yet. But as we sit right now.
I was thinking you were doing so
I know,
well.
really good. Right. The amount we're requesting from taxpayers is minus $2 million.
All right.
But that we now have all the requested budgets. They came in a little bit later than this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't get the last budgets until the last week or two. And so
Yeah.
we're just beginning to get a handle on sort of what all the requests are. If right now we gave every department and every place everything they asked for, it would be an increase of about 3.8% or about $440,000 over last year.
3.8%.
Yep, yep. So not outrageous. I
No.
think that a lot of
No.
departments have done fairly good.
What was the figure on that, Scott?
About $440,000 more, or about 3.8%. It actually might even be printed, although
Yeah.
it might have fallen off the
I mean,
bottom of the page.
that's a good start.
Probably right
Yeah,
on here.
yeah,
Start chipping over,
3.9%
yeah.
officially,
Okay.
about 440,000.
Yeah.
Where we had
Got it.
happy news or good or fortunate news this year is purely from a fiscal standpoint, this is fortunate news, because obviously even reductions have, the number of students at Assabet has dropped from 31 to 27, and so about a $50,000 reduction in Assabet's requisition. Our percentage at Tohoto has dropped a little bit, and so they're going down a tiny bit in their request as well. BMS increase is only about 2.5%. So that is well within, I think, a generally acceptable number. This will be our first year where we have to pay Assabet Capital.
Right.
If there was a year to hit, it's a year when our regular assessment to them goes down.
Yeah.
But it's $110,000 in capital.
Right.
But because they actually finance in a way that we and Berlin generally have approved, which is fixed principal every year, this will be the highest amounts that we end up paying, and every year after this it drops down. Because they promised other towns there wasn't going to be anything last year, you both have last year's principal interest payment and this year's, and so next year's drops to $78,000, so we'll see a $40,000 reduction or so in that next year, and then it drops a couple thousand of that all the way through. If you remember, we decided to try to absorb this within our budget, so this was not a debt exclusion. I think it still turns out to be a good thing for us to have it there, and I think we'll be able to absorb it. Health insurance continues to be a concern. It's another $80,000 up. It's almost responsible for 10% of our total budget, and if you discount the schools, Assabet and Tohoto, where we don't cover that, is more like 12 to 15% of the total budget goes into nothing but health coverage.
They have retiree
And how much of
health
that
insurance
is
too.
due to additional coverage, if you will, and others people
Yeah, that's 'cause we're just
insuring
not
through the
doing
town
anything yet, right?
versus rate increase,
That was our
roughly?
It's not a huge amount.
Okay, so it's mainly driven by rate increases? Okay. I just,
Yeah, although-
was one-
You have a large pool of unmarried people, that's where most of it comes from, when they get married and add the family.
Mhm.
Gives you a big hit.
But there's not a lot of that
No.
right now, so this is
No.
mainly rate increase. That, I
Right.
was just
And
figure out if it was a, more of a
Right.
one-time thing because we were adding people
We-
in coverage, but.
we do have a plan that had the Cadillac tax gone into effect, we would have taken a penalty this year, so it
Yeah.
is considered under sort of the Affordable Care Act definition, sort of a generous plan.
Yep.
It still has probably, I think, one of the lowest co-pays that I think I've seen in
Oh, I was
any place I
astounded when I
go.
saw
And so
it, yes,
I
convenient.
and continue to encourage the Personnel Committee to, follow whatever the right steps are to start, getting it in line with
He
where we
has-
need to go. And
When is somebody?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, we have Maya coming in to tell us the different ways to cut the
Yeah.
cost.
This Thursday?
Yes.
What time?
1 for me and 1:30 for the group.
If you're coming to the group meeting, then we're gonna have to post.
I'm coming. I'm gonna show up.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the general budget stuff. We I think are on our plan. We've met with most departments. We have a few more to go through March. I think we might even start as early as next week to start doing some more recommended budgets. If it follows the patterns, and it's likely is of past years, we will start with the budgets that are, 0% increases. They're non-controversial, just to get those votes out of the way, so that when we get down towards the end of March, I think last year we tried to do the whole budget in one meeting, which is a series of like 50 back-to-back votes, which just is procedurally draining.
Yeah.
And so to lighten some of those was what we're looking for.
Can I point something
Yep.
out?
Yep.
I before E, except after C.
Which is weird, because it's the same template we used last year.
So these are spelt
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
these are all wrong, these are all wrong, receipts.
Yep. We'll run it through a spell check before it goes out. These are the
Picky,
draft early
picky.
versions. It's better to know this now than catch it in the town report, though.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Abbreviated, kind of like the RCPT, and then we don't have to worry about it.
We've tried to spell
So
these things out and not
on
use
Wednesday,
acronyms.
will you be discussing in detail the accountants then? Because it is one that has a significant change.
It is one that has a significant change, and one we'd like to hear from you folks. And so with the overview, I think the other piece that we sometimes forget to do, and I only notice when we try to do the votes at the end, is we do a presentation to you and we don't discuss the budgets, because we don't have you guys in particular come to FinCom and to go over just if there's any ones that we had questions on. And so we put together the list ahead of time. The bigger ones, things like the utilities, streetlights or streetlights.
Hey, those numbers are going down.
They're going down,
this
which
year.
is good, yes, another thing that saves, but, not a lot of discussion needs to happen on them.
Eloise and I disagree.
Oh, okay.
We did sign a net metering, so I think you'll see that I think we decreased the electric.
What does that mean, net metering?
We're gonna get net metering, we're gonna get credits from a solar place in Clinton. So it should reduce our electric bill by 25%.
Great.
So I might just try to take them and,
So we made decisions
Right.
on the Highland Commons, or we voted
Yeah.
on the Highland Commons General Education Fund.
arts and cultural.
Arts and
Yep.
cultural.
Yep.
Are you going, so you're going to take a vote on that also? Is that true or not?
Yes, we'll
Okay.
take a vote on it, because they are warrant articles that are on the town meeting, and so we're planning on that. But if you, on our spreadsheet of warrant articles, where typically we try to vote on also where the funding comes from, I've actually already put in the Arts and Cultural Fund as the funding source for those articles. Since that's what you've already voted, I see no reason for us to muck with it at all, so.
No, and actually, that was a question that I had. Currently, the article is written, the normal sort of raise, appropriate, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And then the motion under the article would have been, as you indicate, to, and I wanted to check with you to see if that was okay, and then your recommendation could say you recommend if the funding comes from this department, or if you would feel more comfortable if we reworded the actual article to narrow the funding source and indicate it in the article. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference, but I wanted, while we were here, and
Yep.
while we haven't quite gelled the wording of the articles, I wanted to know if you guys had any opinion on that.
I would like, I have a minor preference to making sure the article itself mentions the funding source.
Okay.
I think it just helps publicity that that's where it's coming from, and I think might make
Okay.
some of them, the earlier that more people hear where it's coming from, and
That's
that it's not
perfect.
necessarily taxpayer, although it's, opportunity cost when it comes from these funds, but
Okay.
it's not a
So,
raise and appropriate. sort of
Mary, I'll
thing.
just circle back with you
Yeah.
and change
On the three.
those.
On the elevator article, what if the grant doesn't come through? Then do we still appropriate out of that cultural fund?
So.
We do what we- yeah.
I'm of the opinion that that we should actually have two articles for the elevator. One for the 425,000 or 426, whatever it is, from the Arts and Cultural, and one as a loan for the other half. Because I think even if they don't get the grant, I personally would like to see the town put some money forward, because I think their general fundraising will be easier to do, even if they miss this grant, to get other grants if they show the town as a commitment of half of it. And it allows a compromise position if people in town is that it's not like we're either giving them $900,000 or nothing. You have the choice of giving them $425,000 out of a grant, or $425,000 a loan, or both. And that allows people to have different opinions on those different portions of it. And so it's currently written as one $900,000 or $950,000 article.
Right.
And I, again, personally would like to see that as two articles, or one article that gets split on the floor and voted on separately.
So it would be sort of a leveraging tool.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
having that in hand would help with other grants or other funds that they could gather.
Correct, and that's actually why they wanted us
Limiting
Yeah.
to,
It does.
They
Yeah.
did, when they wrote that grant, they said that they were,
Right, and it also allows it easier to pull this, if they get the grant, to pull the second article without having to do some handstands on the floor to say this $950,000 article is now really a $425,000 article because we're removing the.
well, actually, I mean,
Yeah.
we thought that would be, in fact, simple enough,
Right.
that we would put the total amount there, because you can always reduce it.
Yep.
And if we had a grant of 425, that, the math of
Yep.
dividing that in two wouldn't probably escape people on the town meeting floor.
I'd still like people to be able to vote on the grant separately from the loan.
No, you're still gonna need 100,000 according to them if the grant matches the cultural grant. 'Cause They're up at 950 and the two would be 850. So you have to think about that.
Yeah, we can only vote on what they've requested, and so when I last requested, when we spoke to them, it was a $425,000 loan and a $425,000 grant. And so if they need 100,000 more than that, then they'll have to find a place to come up with it. That
Yeah,
has
we have
not
it
been
on
what's
the-
presented to us.
We have it on the plan as 950.
Right, but when they presented to
Right,
us, and when
I
the article was
understand.
written up and presented to us, it was a different number.
Yep.
The spreadsheet at FAC is
No,
what
that's
sort of
right,
dictates
and
what
my
the
understanding of
totals
the
are.
project is that there are portions of it that are quite, that would be the equivalent of about 100,000, that are quite separable from the main
Right.
And
project.
somehow it ties in with Bullet too.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
issues with Bullard, there's also retrofitting that has to be done in the main building, that, a few railings and things like that. Anyway, yeah, they
they know what they're doing.
they know what they're doing, and
Yep.
we'll go ahead with that, and I mean, it is possible to make two separate motions under that
Right.
article. And so we thought at this point to sort of keep it simple, to have have that article.
Right.
Not that article, not the, what I
Right.
had said before, which was very specifically to vote out of the
Right.
fund. We would leave that as generally raised appropriate, borrow, all of that at the 950. And then we could make a motion under that one, because we need the flexibility.
Right.
If we get a $325,000 grant,
Right.
I mean, that, we need to be flexible
Yep.
with that one. And then, the idea was that we keep it that simple, and then we can make motions. Obviously, with this thing, we will need to talk. My understanding is by mid or end of March, we'll know what's happening with respect to the grant. And we'll all have to get together to be sure that things work on the town meeting floor. But I think having that motion, that article out there,
Right.
we can make 1, 2, or 3
Right.
motions under that. Okay?
And then, yes,
Yeah,
that
okay.
works. For the things that are going to be debt, Eloise needs to know relatively soon what are the ballot questions, or are there going to be any ballot questions?
How much levy capacity do you think we're going to have left after a budget?
The last numbers I looked, I mean, $300,000 to $500,000. We probably could make the payments for most of this stuff within the levy.
Okay.
I think when again, personally, because we've not talked about it heavily at FinCom, I think it's a combination of not just whether or not we could do it within the levy, but whether or not we really want to put it on the ballot so that a broader, sampling of town can buy into what amounts to sort of, an increase in taxes, whether it's done within the levy or as a debt exclusion. It's going to increase the amount people pay, and whether or not people think this is a good investment in town resources.
What's the threshold? Is it a 50% vote as a debt exclusion or a 2/3 vote?
50.
Right,
50?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Town-
the ballot question is 50, but the vote at town meeting is still 2/3.
Right.
It's 2/3.
It's, wow.
Yep. 2/3 at town meeting, 50% on the ballot.
Yeah. So it does raise your bar at town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Which debt always has, whether or not it's an exclusion or not. And so I don't know if you folks have opinions about whether or not we should try to do it inside.
Which items are we going to?
So the budget is going to be the highway building, the Conservation Commission fund, the ladder truck, and the elevator. So there are 4 things that I think are large enough that we will not be able to find existing cash.
What the highway is, what are you putting the highway in at? 3.5?
We have
3.8.
3.8 is what the number we have at FinCom.
And what's conservation?
And even 3.
Correct.
The ladder truck I have is $1,030,000. And you got, and we're just hearing now here that numbers changing for the elevator. And so the elevator, I had it 420, so 424, it's probably, 524 now at this point.
And that money that you're borrowing is to cover what, in the event we don't get the grant, is that right?
Yes, yeah, because if they get the grants on the elevator, then they don't need this money and the number would go down.
Right. So in other words, if we get the grant,
Right,
then we wouldn't be incurring debt.
Right.
And there wouldn't be a
right,
debt exclusion.
right. And so, well, because of the time getting to the ballot question, we might need to say we're looking at a ballot question, and if the timing works and we get the
Right.
grant in time, we still might pull it off, but
When do we have to make the decision on the ballot question, Eloise?
Pretty much early April,
Early April.
because I have to
Okay.
have the handicap vote
No, that's
tabulated
good. Yep.
ballots specially made.
Yep. I would,
So we're
I guess-
looking at $8,224,000.
could be, yeah.
And we would bond this whole thing in a big lump over,
We could do it a variety of ways, depending on how the vote goes. And when you want it to hit, we could spread it out. One of the goals when we talked to FinCom was to try to keep the debt down until we pay this building off.
which is 5 years?
2019.
Yeah, 2019, it's out there a bit.
Well, it's only 2 years from 2017.
I know.
Right, so you do some short-term borrowing, and then you do your final, and
Right.
it will get you to that
so you do
goal.
state house bonds for 2 years, or?
What's that?
State house bonds for 2 years, or what?
Well,
You can only-
short-term, bands or rands,
Mhm.
yeah.
Also, the terms might be different because the fire truck might be 20 years and some of these other things might be longer.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I have the
Some might
financial
be shorter,
advisor.
yeah.
Well, and
Shorter.
Coming out.
we might decide to have a separate one for the fire truck so we can sort of use the public safety funds to pay off that as opposed to taxpayer dollars.
Well, then you wouldn't be doing a debt exclusion, right?
For that one, yeah.
Can we do a debt exclusion and still use non-taxpayer dollars to pay it off?
I don't think they care if they're taxed, they'll all end up being,
Right. Right, I'll,
I mean, it's not part of our levy capacity,
Right.
but
Did you, my understanding is Chief would be wide open to, if you could get him 600,000 or 700,000, he'd shop around for a demo or even a used one. So if you just give him that money, that's what they'll do. If you give them
Right.
$1 million more, then they're apt to spend it.
Yep. We had that conversation when the fire chief presented, and he was open to that. Again, at this point, we've not taken our votes and recommendations,
Okay, so you haven't
but it
voted
is,
yet,
it is something on,
Yeah.
and in some respects, part of our job is to figure out how to fund what was requested, and so $1 million is requested. We
Gotcha.
still could, and we have to figure out a way to fund it, but we could still come back with a recommendation of, you know, we think it should only be 600,000 or 700,000,
Got it.
and there might be some of these that we even recommend against.
Yeah.
But we still need to figure out a way to fund it, because just because FinCom says to recommend again, it doesn't mean it's not going to pass on the floor of town and not pass on the ballot question, so.
But if you make a motion, I'm just
Sure.
trying to think this through, if you make a motion on the town meeting floor under the article to borrow, I understand how you then do a debt exclusion vote.
Right.
But if you make your motion when the town meeting comes to pay for that out of the public safety monies and not out of borrowing, I don't understand how you can,
We wouldn't
Go
pay,
on.
we wouldn't make the motion out of the public safety fund. We would make the motion to borrow, and then when next year's budget comes up,
Okay.
the
All right,
increase
sorry,
of
I misunderstood.
$100,000 on our, to the taxpayers because of that
so you would
debt,
take a
we would-
vote to borrow.
Yep. There's not enough money in the public safety fund right now to just
Right.
write a check for a fire truck.
Yep. So you would take a vote to borrow
Yep.
on this town meeting?
Yep.
Okay, and then maybe next year you would decide not to borrow if you had sufficient funds. That's
Or,
what you're saying?
or we would borrow and again use the public safety funds to pay,
to pay it
to
back.
pay
Okay.
back that loan.
Okay.
So I have a question about conservation, because you can't just borrow and leave the money sitting there.
We'll go to the
But-
conservation.
Can you, or is conservation different and you can put it in a fund?
No, you can't borrow at the discount for tax exempt, because you hit that arbitrage
Right, that's what I was thinking.
problem. You can spread it out at the higher rate, but you can't invest it after, I believe it was 5 years, she said in her email. We can't take what's left and make money on it, even if we're paying the higher non-discounted rate.
So it has to sit in a non-interest bearing account?
Correct.
We'd also talked when the Conservation Commission was there about spreading the borrowing out, not borrowing 3 million in one chunk, but like $1 million.
Borrowing it, having the ability to
Sequentially.
borrow and borrow when you need it,
Right.
kind of thing.
Per property,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Of the debt piece, the highway barn is yet to present to FinCom. They're on the agenda for the 16th. And so it's the one where we've not talked about, so I don't know where we're at with it. And how the need might be this year versus next year or 2 years out, when it comes to sort of the timing of things. And we've not really worked with Dennis about whether or not doing $8 million worth of borrowing at once is better for the town than doing $5 million this year and $3 million next year.
Right.
And so there's all the devil in the details still to go in some of those pieces.
All right.
I think the other warrant articles I want to just talk about quickly has to do with copiers in the building. They're small warrant articles. I don't think we have 3 copiers in this building. I don't know if it makes best sense to replace all 3 of them in the same year. I think it'd be better to sort of think of the way we've approached fire trucks, and that we potentially replace the one that's sort of down here and most heavily used, move the one that's there down to wherever the second most used one is, use that to wherever the third most, and that we think that every 2 or 3 years we're buying a new one as opposed to trying to buy 3 of them all in 1 year. It feels a little uncoordinated that there's separate requests for them as opposed to a coordinated request on how to deal with multifunction copying and printing.
And police vehicles, the same way, cruisers.
Yeah, that's how we do it now, yeah. We do 1 a year just to sort of even it out.
Yes.
So tell us about copiers, Mary.
Well, the selectmen have kind of control historically over the one in the main mailroom and the one down the boardroom.
Mhm.
The assessor's office have, separately elected, have always taken charge of their own copying needs, and they're just aging out at the same time. Ours we've always known that this was gonna be the year that the 5-year mark where the OSA, which doesn't exist anymore, but Canon, would not be responsible for providing parts 5 years after the manufacture date. So we've been talking about this for a while. I don't think our office knew that the assessors were gonna come up with this request this year.
Mhm.
We could jointly purchase 3 at the same time, probably off the state list, but that doesn't mean that there isn't still a need for 3. We did talk briefly at an FAC meeting, I think, about possibly the assessors taking one of these castaways, because they're but they also have a lot of copying need. How much, I don't know. But ours aren't just the selectmen's, they're the entire second floor.
Right.
And all boards and committees use them heavily.
Yeah, as you say, I don't think I debated the need. I get those pieces. It's just the, trying to even things out so you don't have these peaks and valleys when we do things. The idea that you would do all, because that means if we buy all 3 of them this year, you're going to face the exact same problem.
I'm not
3 to 5
sure
years
that's
from now.
necessarily true, because there are different volumes and patterns of usage. I think, they weren't, and I'm not sure that all these things were bought in the same year.
The 2 that we have,
Mhm.
the 2 that the selectmen have, were bought at the same time.
Mhm.
One was
But-
new,
Right.
one had 100,000 prints on it
Mhm.
back in the day, and they kind of threw it in to get the deal from us on the first one. So it wasn't a full-out purchase of that second one. And it could be that we'd be doing the exact same thing again this year, telling a company that we want one primary one with a secondary one with some miles on it thrown in to sweeten the deal.
So then we would only need 1 copier
Well,
and keep this one and put it back on the old one.
could be. Oh, and this one has 300, almost 400,000 prints on it.
Mhm.
The one down the hallway is, I think it's 200. I'm just off the top of my head.
And that had miles on it to
When
begin
we
with,
bought
which
it.
is the point I
Right.
was making, that, you start at the same time, but you put very different miles on
Right.
it, depending on where they
Where are
are.
the 3 located? We have ours right here.
Right,
The board workroom.
Boardroom.
right. And then one in the assessor's office. There's 3 of them on this
Assessor's
floor.
office,
Yep.
that's where the other one is.
Yeah.
Well, then there's more. The police have one.
So yeah, the police must, I was going to say, there has to be one
There's some
down
over on the
there.
other side.
Yeah.
Didn't Molly say something about being perfectly happy with the one in the boardroom?
Yeah, she might be. I mean, I think it's as much as us encouraging sort of cooperation around, and it could be one of these things
Molly?
that, yeah.
The assessor?
Yeah.
Isn't her name
But she has
Molly?
one in the assessor's office.
Right, but she thinks that's also old as well,
Oh,
but
okay.
not, but older, and she thinks not as powerful as the ones that are.
The only issue is that the 2 that we have are OSE, and
Right.
they're at that 5-year mark.
I think she's using the one in the boardroom. She just has
She
to walk
walks.
down there and
Yeah, that's
use
not
it.
for, she does use it for copies, but they also use it as a printer.
Right,
They're the only office that uses either of our selectmen's
Right.
printers, copiers as a printer when they have large bulk print jobs.
yeah, we talked to Tom a little bit about that, how these sort of fit into the overall, like, what's the right volume of multifunction devices and how you get the most out of them so you can have slightly fewer devices.
He doesn't feel that they're peripherals. He feels that, the data systems cost center is just the hardware and software run everyone's desktop, but it's not.
Right, because I didn't think it was going to come, it's just that they're part of the same system, even if they don't fall under his budget, that if they're not connected, then you can't get the most out of them, and, it's easier for you to print if you can print to that, or if you're doing large print jobs, if other people can do it, because it's also cheaper to print to those than it is the individual smaller printers.
Can be. And also, they're all scanners too.
Yeah.
But they only recently have been enabled as scanners, so
Right.
this floor is starting to heavily use ours as a scanner,
Mhm.
so it just wears everything more.
Yep.
So would you rather have us just ask for 1? Well, I can't say anything for the assessors, but at the town offices, we could ask for just 1 and then ask for another one next year? Is that what you're requesting?
I would like to see more of it, and it could be, because I hadn't fully thought about the police and fire ones, is just how as a town, how do we sort of have a regular rotation so that, and it doesn't have to be like the hand-me-down like, you do for multiple children in a household, but more like, how do we not buy a whole bunch of them all at once so they all become worn out all at once?
Are they in tough shape now? Are they
They're out of
I think-
warranty,
I was gonna say it's
believe.
out of warranty?
So what Mary's saying makes sense, and I see in other places, is what happens is, they stop making replacement parts. And so although
Yeah.
it might last longer, what would be more expensive to the town is it breaks suddenly, and then without being able to spend a lot of time trying to find it, you just have to take whatever somebody else
Right.
has at whatever price they have at the moment, or be without.
Sure.
And so replacing them in a planful manner before they hit to that point is probably better from an operational standpoint, and I think long-term cost step, because you can spend time negotiating and arm twisting the various, state vendors to get the best rates.
Or just leasing.
Right, or just leasing, which some people do.
That's another way to go too.
Other people have questions on warrant articles? I think that was the only one I specifically had.
And the paving of the municipal parking lot,
Oh, the paving the municipal parking lot.
we had that.
Oh, is there more things that I haven't seen since?
No, I think that was
That
just
was
my.
what
Oh,
we
yeah,
talked about.
just that's another one of the large ones out there at 165, and how much that is needed now versus future years. The total list, when you remove the debt, the big items, the remaining articles themselves don't add up to as much as we've seen in past years.
Well, at some point,
Yeah.
the parking lot has to get done, and the price seems to just keep going up.
Right, like all these, if you postpone a year or two, the fire truck is now 150,000 more than it was a couple years ago, and
Right.
I mean, I think Keith has said that he could not do it,
Right.
but, I mean, is next year gonna be any better?
right,
And it is pretty much
right.
a roller coaster.
Well, I know that like BMS is talking about needing repaving too, and so,
Their parking lot's fine. It's certainly nowhere close to this one, where
Right.
you have the sidewalk that's raised. When you walk in, the, what do you call it? The granite curbing is up above, and
dangerous.
and it's lumpy in other sections.
and so before we run out of time, then budgets the selectmen are responsible for, or the adding, again, 100% increase in the part-time wages for the accountant's office.
You know, can I just say
Yeah.
that the treasurer's office, the tax collector, the accountant, having a single person in these offices and having no one as backup on any of them. I mean, Dennis, you have people in there, but you don't have a employee
Right.
who could take over. I mean, if something happened to him or happened to the accountant, we're kind of just out of luck at this point. So I think getting a second person in some of these offices is important, because the function has become much more complex than it was 20 years ago. It's just one of the things that I keep thinking of and encouraging some of our elected officials to try to get some backup. So if something
Is it
happens.
too late to do that in this budget cycle? It is, isn't it?
Well,
No, both June and Dennis have requested
Okay.
part-time assistants in their budgets, right?
Yeah,
And so that's where some of the increases are.
Yeah.
June has had a part-time person in there, but they're talking about sort of doubling the hours. Dennis has not had a part-time person. We saw what Judy is talking about, we saw happen last year when you went out for a little bit, that we fell behind, and June is still catching up on some of those things. And it has downstream impacts. It is also, though, adding more admin people to town, add more costs, and adding people at enough that get health insurance add a lot more costs to the town.
And especially in the treasurer's position, having somebody else with fiduciary responsibilities and clearances is pretty important.
Yeah, they're typically a treasurer from a small town in the Berkshires. That's what's happened in Boylston and a few other towns in the past. So you can
So
give
this
them more
person,
benefits, even though
this
it's-
person would have fiduciary capabilities and could sign things, and it's nothing, I'm sure that's going to happen, but,
In case you get hit by a truck.
when you're down in Miami on vacation or wherever, we would have some capabilities in that respect.
And so as we do this, I'd also like us to continue or find ways to explore. I get that rules and regulations get more expensive, but sometimes some of our systems, as we've grown out of a town, really need an overhaul, that they're not just little sort of adding here and there, but rethinking how we do things, where some divisions are. What are we doing to not create more little funds that June has to track and the auditors have to audit on, that make everything more expensive and more complicated? What steps can we do to simplify things, that with electronics or software or other stuff, that we can make some stuff simpler, and making some of those longer term investments is important to continue the thinking about too.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, some of the state regulations drive us in the other direction,
Yes.
and we're forced to create new and separate accounts. And
Right.
we've seen, a considerable burgeoning of that. So,
Mhm.
that's part of the tension in trying to manage it,
The other thing that's happened is we're almost at 250 employees now.
Right.
So we're considered a large employer at 250. And the personnel requirements have grown tremendously.
Just the Affordable Care Act stuff that you have to do.
That's just one project that, yeah.
So we
And then
do
they'll
need
rip it out.
someone who is we need a human resource person, we need a procurement person. We're getting to that point where we need somebody really smart who can do
Right.
all those things that are becoming more complex because of federal laws and state laws.
Yeah.
I say town manager.
Yep.
Are you
phrase
talking about
Um,
that?
I am.
I would be too, actually.
Their budgets didn't have a large increase in public building expense for repairs. I mean, obviously it moved the part-time person out of part-time and into the expense line, so the expense line did go up, but the amount it looked like you had dedicated to repairs, we've done some reserve fund transfers the last couple of years for repairs. Are we getting a handle on repairs? Should we be putting more? Do we have a repair plan to help us not have as many reserve fund transfers related to that?
Well, I think the reserve fund transfer this year was the compressor
Yep.
up there. I mean, that really is what I consider a reserve fund transfer. It's
Oh,
an
yeah.
unexpected expense.
Yeah, but just like we over the many years worked with the fire department very extensively because they were having big reserve fund transfers because things were breaking, where more preventative maintenance and more inspections would catch things earlier, causing them to be smaller, but also making sure there's enough money in the budget because although we don't know a compressor is going to break, the amount of mechanical systems we have around the town, one of them is going to break at some point.
Yep.
Be it a boiler, an alarm system, fire sprinkler.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if we looked at the average of reserve fund transfers
Yeah.
over the past 4 or 5 years, and if you wanted to throw in 50% of that, I mean, obviously,
Yep.
if we don't have the repairs, we don't use it, but
Right.
I mean, it's strictly going
Yeah.
to be,
Right,
you know,
because you can't predict what's going to break.
yeah.
If,
And I
you
mean,
do,
I
if
think-
you do that, you have some better prognostic
Right,
stuff
no,
out
and
there.
Keith has been pretty good
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
pointing out things that he thinks is likely
Yeah.
to happen. There wasn't anything that he thought, I mean, in past years, we did address
Right.
things like the ice dams and things like that we could see coming down the road, but nothing.
And do we spread him too thin, thinking he's facilities manager for the town and highway superintendent?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, he gets some help now that the schools have a real facilities person too. So he's, in theory, I'm hoping spending less time on BMS-related stuff, and I still see him, doing library stuff in this building, and
Which is
yeah,
what we intended him to do,
Okay.
yeah.
He just seemed a little stressed when he came and met with us.
yeah. He was a little
He did,
stressed when he
just to let you
met
know.
with us.
All right.
He's got a full plate.
He does.
He does.
He does.
Does a great job.
The building inspector. And so, just trying to make sure we're on top that the building inspector and assistant, because this goes to more than one person, the wages are at about 113,000. But we get from the assessor's office that it's only gonna have a $75,000 impact on new growth. Now, we know this past year, we did that same $100,000 in fiscal year 16 and had like $300,000 in new growth. But are we thinking there's still going to be enough new growth in the long run to keep, because that's no longer a percent of fees like the other
Right,
inspectors
right.
are?
Again, I mean, he is zoning enforcement officer as
Right.
well as building inspector. It is a salaried
Mhm.
position.
There's-
Obviously, there's still some, significant stuff that's going to come in at Highland Commons, and there's the potential for some significant stuff over the next year or two that will come in at Riverbridge. So my sense is it's not something that's going to be critical in the next couple of years, but it may be something that we need to look at in the longer term than that.
Right, when we moved him to salary, wasn't there sort of a commitment to do it for a certain number of years before we'd reevaluate it? Because it's obviously not one of those.
We have 3-year contracts with
Okay,
him.
okay.
Yes.
That expires in 2 years?
Yeah, and
Right.
this one expires in 2
Maybe that
years.
would be a good time.
And we timed
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because we
Okay,
thought
we didn't know.
that would
Yep.
be the
Right.
the bump
Right.
in
And
current
obviously,
pipeline.
it would be setting aside the taxpayers for a second, it's unfair from a social justice standpoint too. On years where your salary would be $200,000 from fees, we're going to cap it at 100, and the years that would be $50,000 because of fees, we're going to make it $50,000. That we get it when it's on the good years, the town comes out ahead, and on bad years, you come out
No, when
behind.
we
and-
put
and so-
that together, we put that together as what, we looked at comparables, for, not necessarily similar sized towns population-wise, but similar towns in terms of development, zoning issues, sort of 495
Yep.
towns, because that's really driven more by development and so on than it is by, pure population. And we thought that that was one, sort of right in the middle in terms of
Right.
compensation when we looked at comparables. And two, we looked at the future at that time over a 6 or 7 year period, 8-year period, I think, and we felt that, in fact, the position would pay for itself in most of those other years. I think because we were doing this not counting what was going to happen in 2008 and 9.
Right.
In fact, we didn't achieve that in the first couple of years, but I
Right.
think over the time we have. So that's where we are, and it is a 3-year contract. It does run in 2 years, and it runs in 2 years because, that's an appropriate time to review it. And I think, my hope is that we're not,
Right.
that we will still look at comparables when we do that, or we're going to have a hard time keeping people in that position, so.
I think the only last thing we have is not as much more of a commentary than a question, is that we are looking at a way to try to put money into stabilization this year, not out of stabilization.
That's a good
It
idea.
might not be a lot of money, but we agree with many of the comments that have been said. Actually, we've said it ourselves, that the money we've drained is about as much as I think we can afford to drain out of stabilization and still have some flexibility if we had another 2008 to be able to do something. And so we are likely to look at some sort of money out of free cash or other sources to get into stabilization.
I think that's a good idea.
And we might, on most years, try to find a way to do that when the number of requests are not huge, is the year to try to do that. We also, I don't think, want to drain free cash as low as we've drained free cash in past years. By leaving a healthy balance means that Dennis doesn't have to borrow when it comes to a cash flow thing during the year that saves some taxpayer dollars, and just means there's more money there in future years potentially to put into stabilization or to cover a year where we have slightly higher than normal free requests.
There is actually one more thing, Scott.
Okay.
But I'll wait till you're done.
The what?
There's one more thing, but I'll wait till you're done.
Oh,
You know.
go ahead.
Okay. Something that came to our attention that's not strictly within our bailiwick, but that we see because we deal with the budgets from both both school systems, Assabet and Tohoto.
Oh, yeah.
Up until about 6 years ago, Berlin students went to Assabet on a regular basis. They were bused over there. They'd look at it for half a day, get a tour, be fed, and be bused back. The town of Boylston's been putting pressure on Tohoto particularly, because if we send students to Assabet, we're part of their compact, right? Boylston is not. If Boylston students go, the town of Boylston has to pay a lot of money for them to go. Tohonto's jointly Boylston-Berlin.
Right.
What's happening now is the numbers of Berlin students at Assabet have been trending downward. And the Berlin students at Tohoto are not getting a tour. They haven't for 6 years. We would like to see that change. There are two different school boards. They've tried negotiating with one another, but they haven't gotten anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as another board that has nothing whatsoever to do with it, we agree with you that there should be, there should be tours, yes.
Yeah, but
Let that be noted.
Yeah, we may come to
No, I
you
think,
to raise
you know,
our voice
if-
about
if-
that, because it's a career option for students.
It
They're
it
not
is,
really
and I
getting-
think it's important
Right.
that students, that students get a chance to go over there and look at it. And I think, I actually think it's pretty ridiculous that
That's a widely
opportunity
shared
is not given.
Right.
One of the things that was suggested to me by people from Assabet was perhaps we could get together and put together a letter and encourage the school district to allow the 7th and 8th graders to do a tour during the school day so that they'd have a chance to see it in operation.
Well, if
with
you're
the
collecting
students.
autographs on that letter, I'm willing to sign
Okay.
it.
You know, the
All right.
parents
I
would be the
think-
most effective doing that.
I think Assabet said they'd pay for the bus. They'd
Yeah, they
they'd
would.
pay for everything.
Yeah.
They just have to,
Right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
Tohoto, as part of their career guidance stuff with students, have to do some career development stuff anyway, so it even falls under part of the missions they're supposed to be doing anyway.
And to
and
give you
so-
an idea, like the Tohoto administration was given a standing ovation by some public officials in Boylston for refusing to allow Assabet access. So that's the kind of
These-
thing that's happening.
well, they've kind of
By
set it
who-
up
who-
as
who?
a,
Public officials in Boylston, when they were talking, I don't know which, I didn't get the full
So
story,
the
but.
school committee was given
Well,
an
the-
ovation by the other public officials?
No,
Well, yeah,
The
that,
The
superintendent.
superintendent in particular was given
right.
a loud clap.
I think it's
Well,
set it
they
up
should come
as
and
a
present here and
us
see if they get
versus
applause or
them.
boos,
Yeah,
okay?
we're not asking let
Money
the
wise.
students go
But
just
that's,
to Berlin.
yeah, anyway.
But we'll come back to you about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're violently in agreement on that one, yeah.
Scott, how does the finance committee, how would you phrase or explain where we are today to the average taxpayer? Like, let's say we didn't have the two big developments.
Right.
We're going along, we got a tax rate.
Right.
And we voted for these huge developments,
Right.
two of them on the outer edge of town. And the people had an idea that would be a result in a substantial tax break going down. Where, are we getting a tax break or?
Well, so for the past 2 years, we have
Yeah.
managed to pass a town budget that did not increase the amount of money we're asking from taxpayers. We didn't use the 2.5%. That's why we have the levy capacity we have right now.
Right.
That is the direct result of the developments in town. I think it is also true, though, that having those developments, there are costs associated with those developments as well. They're not free rides. They're not just checks being written. That they will have extra taxing. Taxing is the wrong. They'll put extra demands on, like, the police department because there are calls up there. There'll be extra. We will probably need to have, things in the fire department that if we were all farmhouses and two-story buildings, we wouldn't need. But that there are commercial buildings up there with stuff in them that is not found in regular housing. There is traffic increased in town that causes, extra wear on our roads.
So is it
and
a
other stuff.
benefit or a deficit?
I personally still think it's a benefit, not just from what it's doing to it diversifies our tax base. It means we're not relying on all the farms for paying all the stuff, because some of the stuff that's increased in the town, health insurance, would happen whether or not we had those malls here. And so I think we have.
And many things, even including traffic and stuff like that, would
Yeah,
also.
because we're on
Right.
495 and 290.
Have you looked at I know there's talk about Penny's having problems, maybe Sears. Do we know what's happening? Anybody looking
No,
ahead to the future?
We as a town now rely on a serious chunk of our tax base from commercial property, which we
Right.
weren't 20 years ago. And so the ups and downs of the economy could have impacts on our town. And so if, Penny's, JCPenney's, Sears, BJ's, Cabela's, if any one of those major taxpayers closed and left town, that could hurt our tax base, just like, Berlin Stone, which is, Berlin Stone
Yeah.
is a major that we are, we've played that game. I think in good years and in average years, it's net the tax bill, but we are playing with, there are risks with that.
Right. And I mean, we have seen trends, particularly with the history of the Solomon Pond Mall, where because there are different drivers, obviously, in the allocation. I mean, basically, your tax bill is effectively your pro rata portion of the levy limit that is the value of your property to all other property.
Right.
In the run-up to 2008, those were not great years commercially. I mean, there were, it was a kind of a commercial recession, but house prices,
Right.
as we all know, in the 2000 crisis, were going through the roof. So during that period of time, even though you didn't lose a major store or anything, because the value of the stores were sales per square foot, that value was going down, and because the value of houses is fair market value, and we were in a housing bubble, what was happening was, during those years, there was a very significant, it was like a 6 or 7% shift from commercial to residential, and now, of
Right.
course, there's been a shift back that's a combination of new growth
Yeah.
and, increased, retail
Yeah.
activity. But it's a very dynamic thing, and you can't say, oh, I'm bringing on this property that cost,
Right.
$1 million to build, and it's gonna do this over this amount of
Right.
time. It's really dynamic, and it changes from year to year.
And I
Well, and
think-
we shifted the tax rate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean-
again, we shifted the tax
Right.
rate.
That gives you even more growth in your commercial area. I
Right.
mean, more
And our tax rate's in par, if not a little bit lower than some of the other towns. We don't have the debt that a lot of other towns around us are having. What we end up having is, I think I don't know, because I wasn't here at the beginning of some of this, but what we really fully understood the impact it would have on the treasurer's office, the accountant's office, the assessor's office, that we now really have a consultant we use every year to fight the lawyers of all these big places that want to lower their tax rates.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're pumping a couple $1 million into our budget. They're responsible for a serious chunk of our budget. Without them, some of those costs would be down, but the tax rate, I think, in this town would be significantly higher.
Mr. Wheeler wanted to say something.
Yes.
I'll make a plug for the Economic Development Commission committee.
I thought you were telling us you needed to move
No,
along
but
to
the
the next
purpose
meeting.
of putting that article on the warrant was really to be able to become a liaison between the town and particularly Marlborough and Hudson. So we work out strategies to make sure we keep those two projects viable as long as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And then to work with the Finance Committee and the Selectmen. So you've got a group that's really above the fray, able to dedicate some time to those long-term issues and make sure that we can stay as stable in that revenue stream as possible. So that's
Yeah.
why that article's on the warrant.
I think it's great because, we've seen in Solomon Pond Mall the evolution of sort of what's there and a shift really, in some respects, from retail to services. There are many more services there than there were, when the mall was first built 20 years ago.
You can count it by the number of nail places that are in there.
Yeah.
There's more than 3.
Yeah. So anyway,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Sounds good.
you can never sort of sit back and just let it happen. It's always changing. All right. Anything else, guys?
No, we'll get you our final budgets again towards the end of March.
All right.
And as we do votes, as they affect you folks, like I did last year, as I send the emails out to department heads, I'll CC the selectmen email stuff that you guys can see what we're saying and what our votes are.
Oh, yes. One last thing.
Yeah?
We don't need to go into executive session for this,
just
I wouldn't
whatever.
think. Do you? Because we're not talking about the, one thing about the possible acquisition of the McCully
Yep.
property. I don't think we need to go into executive session because really we're talking about sources, not terms or
Right.
anything here. So you had indicated that you'd like to see it coming out of arts and cultural or senior housing mitigation funds. I'm not sure how senior housing mitigation fit into it, but I was sort
It's
of
a fund that
interested in
has no drivers and no uses and no definitions, and so
Okay.
as a fund
It's
that,
senior, and it's
I'd be,
housing.
given some of the proposals that you might see coming along fairly soon about trying to create a housing trust or whatever, I think I'd be hesitant to tackle any of that money right now.
Okay.
Because we've got to stay above the 10%. Riverbridge should get us there. If we don't get above it and stay there through the use of a joint housing authority or some such project, which we might have to pitch in some funds for, similar to what Acton or some of those towns have done, I think we'd be making a big mistake.
I tend to agree with you, but I also wondered what your reasoning was in putting it in there, and I now understand.
you asked for possible sources. It's not going to be debt, it can't be stabilization, it's not the public safety fund.
It had the,
We don't have much in free cash, and so you run
I
out of
understand.
possible sources.
It had the great qualification of being there. And,
Right.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
All right.
And
certainly
and-
arts, recreational, cultural, I understand it
Right.
is. If we were to do that, we'd be taking it sort of out of process. But it
Right.
certainly is something that is very important.
I
and
think one of the
we could,
reasons why
we could consider that, yeah.
And if it's a good project, raise and appropriate is
Yeah.
viable, people vote on it.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It sounds like it's a good good deal, so.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
let's,
that's, right now, that's
you
a
know,
hole in that whole property.
Most people are
Yep.
pretty
Yep.
positive on those kinds of
Yep.
things, so.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And good luck as you now have all the material, all the grist, and now you have to grind it.
Yes, yes.
Thanks. All right. Mr. Sennies. Or Mr.'s Senni, I mean.
Measures.
You signed up.
Yeah, I just.
Hi, Mary. Hello.
Hi, Judy.
How you doing, Chris?
Good, Walter, how are you? Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Matt is here, he stepped out for just a moment.
Okay.
But, we're glad to be given a little spot on the agenda to give you an update on how we're doing. We spent the winter very actively working on our financing. We had a Cushman and Wakefield appraisal done of the dwelling program, the 205 units. 84 of those are the affordable housing program, and 120 are not encumbered with affordable units. And it came in very strong, stronger than we expected. That was a necessary piece in order to put in place the debt financing and some additional equity on top of what the Sennies are contributing. But we expect to break ground on the dwellings around June of this year. We're very excited about it, and as I say, that Cushman & Wakefield appraisal of the finished value was just a great thing to see. Matt and I have always felt that the value was there, but until we did a formal appraisal, we couldn't sort of jar loose the debt and equity we needed to join with us on that. The hotel program is in great shape as well. We received a commitment from Eastern Bank for an $18.5 million loan. It's SBA backed, which means the bank takes the full risk while we're building the hotel, but as soon as it's up and stabilized, the SBA financing comes in, and that's kind of a shield for the bank. That's in the first position. The equity had to be upped by both the Rodell companies in New Hampshire, our partner in the hotel, and the Sennies. But we expect that to break ground even sooner, probably May 1. We expect to break ground. We'd like to do a third Senni building. As you know, we own the gas station and the daycare center. At the very entrance of River Bridge, we would like to do a small 4,400 square foot retail building, move the liquor store into that building with a couple of other
So
tenants.
it's basically on the site where the liquor store is now?
Well, on that side of the
side.
street, but closer to the new roundabout.
Okay.
There would be the very first
Okay.
building you'd come to.
Okay.
We've always hoped to be able to own a third building ourselves. Matt's done a great job of creating the tenants that would be in that building, and actually Clinton Savings Bank, which is financing our waterworks, has expressed an interest in financing that building. That's contingent on our getting both the hotel and the apartments underway, but if we do that, I think we'll have the funds to build our third building, which we would continue to
Just
own.
how many rooms in a hotel?
105. It's a Hilton brand. It's called Homewood Suites. It's an extended stay product. It's really Hilton's competitor to the Marriott Residence Inn, which you have around the corner near the hockey facility.
Yep.
We're very excited about it, and I think it will be a good addition to the town and a good taxpayer. So we've worked very hard since the last time we were here. With the liquor license, we know that's on the agenda as well. We're brainstorming with you the idea that maybe we would ask the town meeting if the town of Berlin could ask the state legislature if we could have a third liquor store. We have a malt license at the liquor store now. We can sell wine and beer only.
Right.
We will bring that over to this third Senni building if we can get it launched. But it would be a more valuable taxpayer and a more valuable business if it had a full license. So we may come back at some point and say, would you help us bring to town meeting the concept of a warrant article that would authorize the town to ask the state?
And you know that we're past the annual town meeting
Warrant
deadline at
Yes,
this point?
yes, we're really talking about November, but we
Okay.
wanted to
Because I was
let
going
you
to
know.
say, we do have a window for the special town meeting beforehand, but even that is coming up.
It's coming, it's
Yeah.
coming.
Do we
quick.
want to do it then, in the special town meeting? The warrant for the special town meeting in May?
Yes.
Should we do it then?
I'm not.
When does it close? What date?
When are we going to?
Did we open it?
No.
No.
That's what I thought.
No, I mean, but what I'm saying, I mean, something that you'd have to, you're talking a 4 to 6 week, period of time to make a decision and get it on the warrant. That's what I'm saying,
Okay.
as opposed to
Right.
November. So I just,
Oh, no, we'd like,
Yeah.
we might like to,
Well, when would
do
you
that.
have the bill, I mean, I guess I feel a little funny about this, because you sold your license to somebody at a fair profit, and now you'd be getting another license. It just seems kind of profit-making, I guess.
Well, I think we helped.
that's what it
it's
is.
a right that's.
I mean, are you?
It is.
on that one.
It's a right, and I mean, they, as you remember, Highland Commons initially came and wanted to go the route of a new liquor license. There are pitfalls to that, and it's not an absolute, slam dunk. And there's a timing to that, and obviously they felt that it had value, and the license is a right that, like anything else, that is defeasible. I really don't see anything wrong with making a profit on it, and then.
Well, I think we helped create a good taxpayer up at Highland Commons. We have a good taxpayer now. The malt and license that you extended to us is perfect. But as we look at the values that we're going to wind up with when we're finished with the development, if that's something we want to do together, we may raise it. But again, it's about creating the tax base that might be helpful.
Well, how long does it take to get one through?
We were told that it would take, through Representative Norton, that he could get it done, they have special votes on a bi-weekly basis up at the State House, and that he checked with different people and thought it wouldn't be problematic. Apparently these sort of things happen in towns with 30 licenses, and somebody needs a 31st, and the town thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah,
It really is about the town.
I think you're talking probably 6 to 9 months, as
Yeah.
a process.
We just wanted to raise it as an idea. The last item we wanted to bring up to date on is the Reese Meadow. We did get a call from Sharon Reese. As you may recall, the 12.5 acre parcel that we didn't buy is still owned by the Reese family. It's zoned for residential use. You could have probably 5 single-family homes on it.
Is this the one across from Spooky
Across from
World?
Spooky World, exactly. And the rights with regard to that parcel are as follows. The town has a right of first refusal because it has been under Chapter 61A.
Right.
And if it were either taken out of Chapter 61A or there was a purchase and sale agreement, the town would have the first crack at that. We have a right of second refusal, which we bargained when we bought the remaining land from the Reese family. But Sharon called us and said, we have someone who's interested. We don't know who that is. She didn't tell us, but it got us thinking about the meadow and where we might be going here. You'll also recall that we own River Run, but the town has a right to buy half of the developable possibilities up at River Run for $1. We also have an extra tax that we owe the town beginning in November if we don't provide a senior component.
Right.
And the way our development agreement reads right now, that has to be nursing or memory care, anywhere in the town of Berlin.
Right.
But we looked at the Reese Meadow and we thought, what about some senior housing there? It wouldn't be memory care or nursing because we haven't attracted that, but it could be over 55 houses that would be 3 stories, condominiums that would be for sale. 15% would be affordable under the zoning bylaw, so that would also contribute to the subsidized housing inventory. And we did a little rough plan just to brainstorm with an idea that comes with it. I don't know if it's helpful for viewers at home if I...
Yeah, why don't you do that? We can turn around.
Again, this is very rough. Is this angle all right? Yeah. So as you know, this is the River Run property that we bought from John Deli Perscoli. He had gotten a 40B approved right here, 36 units, 32 units, 36 of them 3 bedrooms, so 90 bedrooms here. We told the town we'll buy it and cancel that 40B, and that helped us get the zoning overlay zone for Riverbridge. This is the 12.5 acre Reese Meadow, And what Matt and I
And
thought.
just for the home audience, point out where Spooky World is.
Spooky World is right here, these three buildings, right across River Road West from this 12.5 acre parcel.
Mhm.
Again, this is zoned agricultural residential. You
Right.
could get, we did a feasibility study once, I think 5 very long, single-family lots here. And so Matt and I said, maybe we can accomplish a bunch of things at once, which would be give this whole thing to the town for $1, buy this from the Reese family at the purchase price they're looking for after the town decides what to do with its first refusal, and put one building that's very much like the 36-unit building that's part of our dwelling program at Riverbridge, which is right over here. That would be 3 stories above underground parking, and it would be over 55. There'd be 44 units, 66 bedrooms, no 3-bedroom units, all 1s and 2s. And it would create a senior component that would help us get away from the extra tax that we're trying to get away from. It would provide a good taxpayer to the town. It wouldn't have any negative impact on the school budget. There would be some municipal services involved here, but it might be a net benefit, which is what the town has always hoped we would do with the senior component, create a negative, an overall plus for the town on a net basis. This would also provide 6.5 acres of open space as part of the meadow. What you're really doing is taking the development opportunity and concentrating it near the road across from Spooky World with some underground parking and leaving the majority of the 12.5 acres open. So again, we'd give this up. We would want to retain the 2 wells that are here, or the right to take the water across the street. And this parcel here was going to be the sewage disposal system for the 90 bedrooms that were going to be here. We'd like to transport effluent across the street and have it be discharged here, obviously subject to DEP's approval on both counts. Right now, we take water 3,000 feet from these 2 wells, and it's our phase 1 water at Riverbridge. That must be discontinued when we complete the big water system, which we hope to do this year. And again, Clinton Savings Bank is loaning the funds on the water work. So it's an idea that we wanted to toss out to maybe accomplish a few of the things that are in our
So
pipeline.
what you would be suggesting is an amendment to the development agreement.
Yes.
Changing the senior component, removing the 50K penalty, conveying the open space, and agreeing to limitations on use and development as you've indicated here is what you're talking about.
Yes.
So that would be to come to a special town meeting in the fall perhaps?
In the fall.
Okay.
And we would work out with the planning board, how do you zone this? It sort of fits with something we already have called senior residence development, except that has a cap of 4 units per building. So we might have to create something new. We'd have to brainstorm with them, how do you zone this in to make it a good use here? But I think overall, it matches up well across from Spooky World, and it preserves an awful lot of open space. This is 26 acres, and this entire parcel is 12.5, so it would add to the overall open space of the town.
That parcel abuts what you have right now, right? Is
Well, there's a little strip that we don't own. Oh, no, we do own it, sorry. It does abut Riverbridge, that's right.
there, okay.
And if this were something that we could fit into that senior residence development bylaw that we have, that requires 20 acres of land and at least 200 feet of road frontage. This has plenty of extra road frontage. We also have the rest of 20 acres that can be combined with this. That's already part of the conservation restriction, but we have an owners association at Riverbridge called TRA, the Riverbridge Association, Inc. That already exists and is managing completed sections of our project. That exists because one day the Sennies are not going to be the developers anymore. We might own some of the lots, but there needs to be an owners association. And DEP is asking us to convey land into TRA that will accommodate all of the utilities. Our leach fields, the the waterworks, the wells, so that's all being deeded in, but we held aside the rest of this 20 acres.
So
It
you
hasn't
could-
been deeded in.
You could repackage it
It could be
at
packed.
its size that would meet the senior residential.
Exactly, that's why we did that. So
Okay.
we actually come pretty close to meeting that zone. Now, to use the senior residence development, you have to go to town meeting anyway.
Right.
Because it has to be overlaid on a given piece of land. And the one part of it I don't think we do meet is the 4 units in a building
Right.
max. So, again, we're just brainstorming tonight. We wanted you to know how we've been doing on financing and getting started. And we think this might have a kind of nice blend to it where the town would get this and this open space, and we could have enough value here that it would be worth paying the amount of money that the Reese's are asking for the meadow.
One question would be the fact that you were gonna use the water resource on the River Run site to take care of this new facility. What does that mean in terms of the town being able to possibly develop the River Run site, which was one of the options we looked at in the past? If the water capacity's gone, then the town is faced with the hurdle of trying to create another water supply if it was gonna do that. So I guess the question then would be, would you be adverse to talking about putting that facility on the River Run site and working with the town to acquire the Reese property so that field stays undeveloped entirely, and you develop the River Run site instead? Because it seems to me there's conservation land on the River Run site. If there's 30 whatever acres, 12 of those are tied up in conservation, you've got a 20-acre parcel there that still allows you to develop, and you've got the water there on the site already, and you've got the proposed septic. And then the town ends up being able to protect a piece on the Spooky World view down the road.
Sure, that would reverse
I
things.
mean, is that really out of your battle plan, or?
No, but it would mean the town would be giving up the
Right.
right to
Right,
buy
that would-
half of the River Run for
Right.
$1. It may be a little bit less desirable for this building to be here, but I think it would probably still work. So I wouldn't say that's out of the question, but the other thing I could say is that there are actually 2 wells here, 2 public water supply wells, each of which was permitted for 10,000 gallons a day. And the way that permit read, they could only be used to back one another up. So you could only draw water from one at a time. And 10,000 gallons a day could accommodate this building. So you actually have 20,000 gallons a day here, and it turns out that they were to be back up to one another because they were closer together than 50 feet. But it turns out they're not. They're 53 feet apart. So you'd have to go back to DEP and say, can we separate these so that we can actually have 20,000 gallons a day? If the answer were yes, and I don't know if it would be, that would leave 10,000 gallons a day here for a town development and 10,000 gallons a day here. Again, I'd have to ask DEP about that, but we could look at it a number of different ways. But Matt and I are most anxious to implement a plan that's going to relieve us of the extra tax that we promised the town. And we know Sharon Reese is anxious right now. We also don't want to see 5 houses here. I think that might not be as desirable for the town. So this phone call from Sharon Reese created the urgency and this plan, but Matt and I are also saying maybe there's something here we can do on the
Okay.
whole picture. So we just wanted to give you an update and introduce the fact that Matt and I are brainstorming.
Yep.
We'll
No, and I appreciate that the things that you put on the table have a quid pro quo for the town, because obviously you promised to give the town $50,000, and to go to the town meeting and say, well, let's just forgive that's going to be a tough.
Right.
That's going to be a tough sell. So something that sort of changes the game and has demonstrable pros, and obviously the con to the town is losing the $50,000 a year, but also addresses some of the other the issues. I think I think we're open to that kind of
Yeah.
consideration.
I think the town would be much more amenable to what Tim talked about than to have it over there. People love that meadow down through there and that view, particularly if we can
We did a
somehow get
feasibility
good-
study
somebody to go in
on going up there with that building, Chris.
to go into
The road was
Spooky
very
World,
cost prohibitive.
Put that across the street.
Yeah.
To get to the River Run one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this requires
This is a, we ran the numbers on that with only the one building up there. It was pretty problematic. We had Dryden put it together for us way back when.
It actually would cost more to build this road than it will to buy this meadow.
Well, what, by almost, yeah, a lot more.
Well, more.
And it has to be a road and not a drive?
No, it could be a driveway if it's one user. So
Right.
it wouldn't have to meet subdivision
Right.
regulations. If it were just one user here, it could
Yeah.
be. Well, actually, this is residentially zoned from here
Yeah.
to here.
There was a
So I don't
problem.
know if you have to have a subdivision road to cross residential.
Maybe ways to work with that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe ways, yeah.
I mean, if that's the stumbling block, yeah, so,
So we're brainstorming.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the chance to just bring you up to date on how
well,
we're
thank
doing.
you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from the floor on that? I would say that I'm mindful of the fact we're running 15 minutes behind and we have another meeting, so, but if anybody does have something that they'd like to raise quickly on it, please feel free. No?
All right,
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the update. And the update on development, that sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. With apologies to our sister board, the Board of Health, who I guess requested a short meeting regarding political signs at the transfer station?
Yes, we just wanted to clarify our understanding of what the rules are regarding political signs. In the past, and as far as we've been able to ascertain from the building inspector today, and our current knowledge is that political signs were allowed for a period of about 4 weeks ahead of a town election, for the most part. They could be put up and left up, but removed 24 hours after the election was happening. And if they don't remove them, we remove them and dispose of them appropriately. And since they're expensive, most people come and take their signs in case they're crazy enough to want to try to run the following year. However, we heard there was some, I don't want to say disconnect, but we want just to verify our understanding of what the rules are.
Sure. Okay.
So that we can properly manage them.
Yep.
Because we asked Pete to do the managing and.
Yep. Okay. Well, the rule is basically that town facilities, now, talking about political signs on somebody's front yard or on the public way is one thing. And so if you're talking to people and they think you're talking to them about that, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about political signs on town facilities, okay? And political activities in town facilities. And the rule on that is there could be no fundraising or anything like that. That's hard and fast, pure and simple. And the rest of it is that is prohibited, the use of those on town facilities, unless there is an established policy, and that policy is designed in such a way as to provide full, even, equal, and public access to that for all. So it's a high bar to do. So basically, the rule is no, unless you have a policy in place to do that. I think this arose from the fact, obviously, that I was down on Saturday, and I don't believe we have a policy, and I think that's an exposure, when people are, because we don't. However, we have a practice, and people have, stood down there with signs and so on. I objected to the fact that a sign in this case was affixed to the recycling container, and the person holding the sign was in no proximity to it whatsoever. It was just standing there. I had no idea, personally, what it was. To me, it gave the impression that the town was endorsing a particular candidate, and of course, we all know that that's not the purpose or the privilege of the town. That's the purpose and the privilege of the voters of the town. So I requested, when I found out that the person who brought the sign was standing right over there, I suggested that they take it off the town container.
Yeah, it's standing up.
And if he wanted to stand there and hold it, as people had customarily did, that was fine. But I was glad that you actually, made the appointment to come in, because the more I thought about it, the more I thought, without a firm written policy, we should not be putting you in the position of enforcing or telling people what to do. That's above your pay grade, and it's out of your, it's out of your bailiwick as somebody who's been hired to run the transfer station, and especially if you don't have a written policy to guide you.
I guess.
So my inclination, actually, the more I thought about it, was that unless and until we have a written policy, we should just obey the state law that says none of these, signs on the public facilities. Doesn't mean you can't have it on the public way, near the entrance, whatever, or like we do outside the polls on election day, that where it's in the public way outside.
You have to be 150 feet.
I understand that,
away
no,
from,
but I'm saying is something that, where people were outside at the entrance and people would see signs and all of that, it would function in much the same way. But I do feel that we probably need a written policy on this that governs all town facilities. And as I say, when I went down there and saw that on Saturday, I just saw it as, I knew we didn't have a policy, but I'm a lawyer and I recognize that policy evolves as a matter of custom as well, to a certain extent. And I would again emphasize I had no, I had no quibble and no argument with the person standing down there with the sign. I just thought that it was outside of policy and practice to have that sign affixed to the town equipment without a personal voter attached to that sign.
Okay, the only thing I can say is, we've done this now for the 19 years I've been there. And I agree 100% with you. We don't have a written policy, but we came up with a procedure, on our own, on that people put them up when they're there and they take them down when they leave, which has worked for all this time. And everybody gets equal. I mean, I'll give you a good example. When Sue was running and Bobby was running, they both had signs. Bobby came to me and says, well, Sue has the sign up, can I put a... Definitely. We treat every single person
I have to say, purely as hearsay, so I don't really know the truth of it, I have heard people say that they felt that they were not treated equally.
Well,
and
we really do.
And I, again, I know what hearsay is, and I know there's a lot of, scuttlebutt that goes around. I only raise that because the fact that there is, hearsay and claims other than that, I think demonstrates to me that there's a need to sort of better organize and document it, because otherwise, it's just a big exposure. And it's a sensitive issue. I mean, I think that's why you came in.
Right.
Because I objected to what was
I
down
just
there, and
wanted-
it's a sensitive issue.
Well, and it's also, election times is coming up, and we want to make sure that we fully understand.
Yeah, because I'll have
What I would suggest is this: we can. Mary is a very good forensic Googler, if may I call you that. And
a new title, Mary.
And obviously, I think we can go, and I'm sure that there is something packaged that town council would have, given the number of towns that Copeland and Page do. So what I'm going to suggest is this. I mean, the primary election is tomorrow, so we have no issues that's going to arise between now and then. But what I would suggest is this, give us, a meeting or two, and then let's reschedule something in maybe 3 weeks. Maybe if we all want to be here, it may have to be early in April, but that's still, time before an election.
I did talk with Larry today.
I understand that, but,
I don't know if that was any part of it, what he gave me.
You can hand it to me, but what I'd suggest is we'll put this stuff together,
Yeah.
and then we'll have a meeting when we're prepared, and I think we'll be better for it, for preparing this.
Yeah. This was just something that he had tried to do through the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And he's been shot down for.
Oh, yes, these
3
are,
years
these are political signs.
Correct.
On people's lawns and stuff like that, and
Right.
that's a different issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
Unless
Yeah.
you have the landowner's permission, right?
Well, no, but I think what he was trying to do here, if I remember correctly, was we were trying to create a situation where, like 2 weeks after the election, it's like enough
Oh, they're
already,
up.
take down
Yeah,
the signs,
exactly.
they become, and that was what the Attorney General, and those were signs that were on people's lawns,
Right.
private property, and that was an issue
On our
of
roads.
political speech. What we're talking about here is political advertising actually on the grounds or
On
within a
municipal-
building of a town
municipal
of a
property.
municipal facility. And that's what I think we need to put a pin through and be more precise. So I think we'll get some forensic Googling, we'll get a little advice from Copeland and Page, and then in like 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4, if Walter, you want to be here?
To me, it's a tempest in a teapot, but it's a great sport, I've hung around more dumps in my life, running for office, and everybody does it, and I've had signs and everything, but I can understand the policy, the need for policy too, so.
I'm 100%
whatever
wanting
you-
something in writing,
Yeah.
because then, I get people that are running for state rep, I get them from
Sure.
all the other towns, they seem to
Sheriff.
come here.
Sure.
He had
And-
a sign up one year.
Yeah, I think,
And I just want to have something that if,
it's good for
something
you,
that I can
it's
say,
good for the town.
here, here's what the
and then
rule
we
is
know what
on
it
it.
is.
You have my permission to put together a policy if I'm not back.
All right, okay. All righty.
So we'll wait, and Mary can let me know when she wants us to come
Yeah,
back in.
as I say, be 2, 3
and,
weeks.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
What state law governs this?
There's one state law, and it is, unless you have
It's
it.
public resources and campaigns.
MGL, Chapter 54, Section 65.
And then there's a Supreme Judicial Court case called Anderson v. City of Boston that construes it. All right?
And the other question is, does the Selectmen or the Board of Health have jurisdiction over the transfer station?
Certainly the Board of Health has jurisdiction over the operation of the system, but as a matter of town land and town facilities, we are the chief executive board for things other than the operation of it as a transfer station.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right then. Would you mind if we take a 5-minute break?
Go have a cigarette.
I might just have to go now.
Well, then you could have just left.
All right. We're convening again after a short break. Mr. Wheeler of the Planning Board is here with us.
The Lieutenant Governor's office has got in touch with you
Yes,
to
please
request
talk
an
about that.
audience. And it's in response to the application that you told me I could go ahead with to apply for a community compact. So when you apply for a community compact, it says, what are the best practices that you might pursue? And we chose 2. One was community shared services, which we'll work with Central Mass Regional Planning on because they've got a funding project from DLTA.
Services shared amongst towns.
Yeah, so it might be, so Central Mass will investigate other possibilities for shared services.
And we've got a leg up on
With
that
a-
because of our
Right.
movement on the dispatch and so on.
Dispatch
Yeah.
and Board of Health,
Yeah, Board of Health.
Neshoba and all
Mhm.
that sort of stuff. And there's other things. So, but there are other projects similar to that that could involve some contiguous towns in some cases, or towns that are further afield. because it wouldn't matter that you were contiguous. So there'll be an evaluation. We're one of the participants in that, so that helps us with our community compact agreement by satisfying one of the best practices. The other best practice was complete streets that we listed, and we listed that because the planning board's in the process of working on transportation next, and
Is
as a
something
res-
like the rail trail encompassed within that or relevant to that?
what I think access to and from the rail trail from some important features within the town. Like if you said you wanted to find a way to get from the center of town to the rail trail, and you wanted to create some sort of sidewalk or bike path
Yep.
or whatever that would
Or
allow
if there
people.
were some sections of the railroad that for one reason or another were inconvenient to
Right.
landowners and you wanted to bring that, I mean, I think we've
Right.
people on Carter Street have
Right.
been concerned, and yet Carter Street strikes me as a street that could be, made a complete street with a
Right.
good, but, I mean, those little tweaks that you need to get
So-
something through would be helpful,
So we've, in order to participate in Complete Streets, an employee of the town has to participate in a workshop. So I went to a workshop and asked the question if I was considered an employee, because I'm an elected official, but not employed necessarily. And they
I always
said-
thought that about planning board even when I was on it.
Right, so they said, what do you want? So I've emailed the state and haven't gotten a response. So if the lieutenant governor did come next week, that would be one of my questions, would be, can you help identify whether or not I can continue to be the person that's actively engaged in Complete Streets or not, whether it needs to be someone else. But Complete Streets would allow us to work with Central Mass and with Sue Brown and get some state funding. There's the availability of about $50,000 to do some evaluation, and then if you move through stage 2 and 3 in terms of outlining what it is you might want to do, then you can approach for some funding to actually perform some of the changes that you might want to make. But it's a lot of it has to do with finding ways that pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles, automotive, private things, and public transportation all work together. Well, public transportation for us isn't a big issue because there's no routes, although you would identify the senior bus as part of that package. But then you just look at the ways in which improvements to any of the network of roads that you include, and it doesn't have to be the whole town necessarily, but it would be, you might very well look at the school to the rail trail,
So it's like
to the
this-
aqueduct, to the,
So
the
it's like the
library.
Scenic Roads Act that you can designate certain roads as complete streets.
When we said to the folks at they're just launching this, so even the language that came out today, I think, probably elaborates further on what the whole intent is. Because the workshop I went to, they said, well, the ink isn't dry yet. We're still, putting some of the features together. So I think that's part of the exploration. And again, we'd work with Central Mass because we'd engage them with some of our master plan money to help us write a Complete Streets
policy.
Policy.
Plan.
And then you submit that, and if that gets approved, then you're eligible for some further funding, and so it opens the door to some possibilities. So that's where we stand.
And this meeting next Tuesday, because we were talking about the fact that the lieutenant's governor's here and might want to meet from somebody with Selectmen, we might have to get a statement together. Can we talk about that for a little bit while you're here?
Of excitement of being a community compact.
We have to express how excited we are.
I'm guessing.
Well, I think you simply say that any opportunity...
Are you available to come along?
I can come over.
Okay.
Any
That's
opportunity where what the state is saying is there are a series of best practices that all communities ought to pursue. And that what we'd want to say, I think, is that we're pleased to have the state as a partner in pursuing some of the best practices that are in our best interest. And that clearly our experience in the past with shared services has convinced us that they're worth evaluating. And that along with Central Mass, we'll work on that through the DLTA process. And the Complete Streets package is an opportunity for us to work with the state and the Regional Planning Commission to evaluate traffic and pedestrian and bicycle safety and, I mean, today I was riding into Dorchester, and, you go through Brookline Village, and you see the little symbol on the road
absolutely.
that says there may be a bicyclist in this travel lane
Yep.
that you're in. They don't create a special lane because it's impossible there.
Wakes you up a little bit.
But you just say, and that's what they said. In some cases, it's as simple as that. The other cases, it might be like, changing Carter from 62 to the library is a one-way road, and from Carter along Woodard Avenue to 62 is a one-lane road, and creating a substantial amount of additional parking in the center, not really inconveniencing anybody, probably making it safer to get onto 62 instead of trying to jump out from Lowe's, probably making it easier to get out of Lowe's if you don't have to worry about somebody coming out of Carter. So, it's a lot of stuff, evaluating that with some serious traffic people from Central Mass. Because from regional planning commissions, Central Mass's transportation group is considered one of the best in the state. So, they're eager to work with us. And we've got master plan money that's ready to be dedicated to transportation. So, we said, these all line up in a row.
Great.
Without a great deal of heavy lifting on our
What's the
part.
time frame like on that, on, let's say, that 50 grand you talked about?
Well, the
for-
complete streets thing, I think what you'll find is that with the community compact in place, then we get extra points in regard to our complete streets application. We have to put the policy essentially together, and there's some boilerplate language that we can use for that pretty easily. And we could work with Central Mass to put that together, and I would think we could have that done, by the summer. Then you put that policy forward to the state. If they accept that, then, you begin to be eligible for some opportunities in the fall. So, to me, it's 6-8 months, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it coincides with some of the evaluation that Central Mass could do for us, and then we could further study it and really design what would happen.
And they
That
would look at
be
what
some more
things like
money.
you just mentioned, one-way streets
Yeah.
and getting
Yeah.
from the center to the trail.
Well, how do you get to the school on a sidewalk that is complete and not interrupted some part of the way? Or how do you get from, in front of the bank down to the town-owned land off of Pleasant? And how do you get up to the aqueduct on Linden Street in a safe fashion? Because that's obviously a way now that people can travel, and the aqueduct and the rail trail, the potential rail trail connect way out in West Berlin, but, if you could bring people in via Carter to the center, that's to the economic benefit of anybody that's got anything going on in the center, plus culturally too. You've got opportunities at 19 Carter or the town hall with the
Or the
theater
Many
stuff.
Hands Thrift Store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, stuff like that.
Grand
So,
opening, March
So,
17th.
just to,
she's
it's
got
next
enough, now she can
Tuesday.
write it up.
Next
Send
Tuesday.
me drafts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's next Tuesday. It's the lieutenant governor. Anyone else coming?
It sounds like Naughton too, maybe.
It sounds like he's going to get Senator Flanagan and/or Representative Naughton
Yeah.
probably to
Okay.
be here, and the press.
Okay. All
Which
right.
would mean someone from the Telegram.
So you're willing to come?
Huh?
Okay, I think
Yeah, I
I
can
can
come
juggle
over.
my schedule around so that I can
Okay.
do that.
And yourself.
Yeah.
And any other selectmen, should I post it as a meeting?
Judy wants to come and Walter wants to come.
Do you want to,
Post it as a meeting? Or
does
not?
anybody else want to come? Because then we will post.
We'll just post it as a meeting in case, I might even be on a plane, I don't know what the schedule is. We're
Next
leaving
Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
Are you leaving Tuesday?
Yeah.
Oh, you're
This
leaving
is
late.
the afternoon,
You're
so-
leaving late in the day.
Yeah.
You're not flying over in the morning, you're flying over at night.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
you'll be
yeah,
here.
post it.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, kids.
All right.
All right, I learned a lot tonight, thanks.
Thanks. Okey doke. All right, next on the agenda, I think Mary has some stuff to talk, continued participation in the Neshoba Valley Working Town Administrator Group and the appointment of a representative.
Well, what is the number B?
That's appointing Michael O'Malley as part-time officer, which we did.
Okay.
That we did before we
Oh,
got into.
okay.
So that, yeah, that's where we are. Go ahead, Mary, you want to?
Yep, I went to the first, I guess, official meeting of the Working Town Administrators Group last week at the Neshoba Valley Hospital in Air. And there was like 8 town administrators in the room. We would be the only town that does not have a town administrator participating in it. If all 16 communities showed up, other than Devon's, which has a mass development vice president. So they talked about what they might want to do. They had a lobbyist there with experience working for different administrations. And one of the things that they would like to spearhead is Central Massachusetts voice in lobbying on Beacon Hill when necessary for different things, perhaps even the municipal modernization bill that the governor's office has put forward. That was one thing that I thought that the town could possibly benefit from remaining involved in this group. But other things that they brought up, I don't know that this board is either impacted by or has any concern over. Like, for example, the MBTA, I don't think is something that is a big concern for this town.
They extend the green line out here.
Yeah, except for one selectman. The EPA's upcoming stormwater standards and enforcement efforts, I think the town gets a waiver on those, and that's not necessarily something but they were all really anxious about that.
Yep.
And also economic development. I just think that somehow, it's a magnet here, and you're not necessarily seeking out economic development per se. So I don't know that some of the topics that they're gonna talk about mesh.
Yeah, well, you and I talked about the idea of your going, if you were interested, just to sort of keep an eye on what's going on, and if they were going to do something that we wanted to be active, in, you could report on what the agenda was, and we could send a selectman if they got onto, some subject. And I'm thinking about things even like the stormwater management. I mean, my understanding of it is because we have very, very minor stormwater management. I mean, it's
Yeah, right.
little that's more than culverts and brooks, which really are not the same thing. That we are a small enough operation that we are exempted for that. But if, for instance, they were going to have, some expert to come in and talk to them about that, if you're willing to go and you feel that, you're learning enough, I'm in favor of you attending. It's once a month.
It's once a month, and they said they're gonna keep it to a tight hour, and that if they had months where there was nothing really meaningful to discuss, they wouldn't meet.
1 hour.
Not half a day or something like that.
No, 1 hour. And
So
it's at
8
the
to
beginning of the
9.
day, so, yeah.
The 8 to 9 is
Yeah,
when
8
they're
to
trying
9,
do
and
it.
Mary's willing to do it. And I know, you're interested in municipal administration, generally, so, my feeling is if you're willing, to go and attend and keep us up to speed, and then, as I say, if there's a subject matter that we feel like we need to get actively engaged in, we can appoint a
Do
selectman.
they put out agendas ahead of time with the subjects on them?
I think when they get there, they will be doing that.
This was the first sort of organizational meeting, but.
They actually, at this meeting, they appointed Thatcher from Devon's, the executive vice president for mass development, overseeing Devon's as the chairman, and Pepperell's town administrator called after the meeting to ask if Berlin would support him for vice chairman. I said, I don't have any authority, but I don't think there's anybody running against him, and I don't think it's controversial, so.
I don't want the job, do you?
No.
No. I'd
But
say
the
go for it.
other piece about this is that they were asking for the different town administrators to send back feedback by Friday, what expertise we would bring to the table to share. So I don't know if they mind having a fly on the wall, but I don't know that we'd be lending any expertise to this group.
Well, I mean, one of the things you could say is that we have expertise in negotiating and managing large-scale commercial developments.
That's a fact, yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah. Some of those towns have that. For example, Littleton is doing it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And Westford probably too.
Right.
has
Well,
done
what
it.
do the other towns bring? I mean,
I don't know.
Nobody
that's
will
to
know
be
until
determined. Yeah.
they all come with their brown paper bags and open them,
Yeah, I know, but I
Yeah.
mean, everybody pretty much, more or less, has the same issues and the same,
Probably, yes.
I mean, to lesser or greater
Mm-hmm.
degrees, but
I don't think there's any harm.
Yeah.
I'd say let her do it. after 2 or 3 times, it doesn't think it's profitable, it's just stop doing it.
And you
If it
might
thinks
also
it's
say,
beneficial, go. Not a big
intermunicipal, large and intermunicipal conservation land projects is another area that we have some
Yeah.
specialty in.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean,
Okay.
all right, I think those, give them those two. I mean, again, if that was something that they were going to have a skull session on, I think we could send people who could contribute to that, you know? Okay?
Will do.
All right. And thank you for taking that on. All right. Next,
I
revised
could be brief on that, which is.
fiscal year 17 expense budget regarding,
Yeah. There is something that's offered through Suffolk University, which is a certificate program that would lead to a master's in public administration. That is quasi-sponsored by the MMA, and it requires the sponsorship of the host town or city if you wanted to forward somebody into the mix for this certification training. This is something we've not discussed before. It also has a deadline of April 29th, so there would have to be fiscal year 16 money in place for this, which there isn't.
Okay.
So upon rereading this, it would be something that unfortunately probably wouldn't work out for the coming fiscal year 17 when the program actually takes place. But for $2,500, it gets you 5 MPA courses, and this year to come, being taught in Westboro, which is even more attractive than where it was this year, which is Burlington. So I thought Westboro would have been a pretty cool commute, 25 Fridays in a row, which Fridays are my day off. And I thought that it would be kind of perhaps a logical extension, since the town doesn't have a town administrator, and I'm looking for professional development in that way, if that would be something that the board would want to consider. But I don't know how you'd be able to fund it, for example, this year, for training that starts in the fall. So that's why I put it on, I took it off by email, but I wanted to just discuss it with you. That
Yeah.
if you wanted to do that, let's say, funding in the coming year for the year after that, for me personally, it would be totally dependent on what town that was taking place
Yep.
in. Westboro I just thought was so neat, but then when I read some more about that, it looks like, to come up with $2,500, it couldn't come out of the selectmen expense budget. We only have $3,000 left for the rest of the year.
Typically, in a corporate environment, you can take courses and then you get paid when you've successfully,
So reimbursed when?
so you get reimbursed when you've gotten either a certificate or a grade that goes with them. And if that was what you
We
wanted
could- we
to
could
do,
do
then we
reimbursement
could
in
put it in
17.
the 2017 budget.
Oh, okay.
so think about that.
Yeah.
I would be willing to do that because I
Okay.
would get that done to do that. The only thing is you would still, even if you did want to do that, you'd have to revise your 17 budget.
Yes.
And I don't know that there's an appetite for it, but outside of this room.
Are you going in on Wednesday, Judy? To talk to
About the accounts
FinCom?
budget.
Yeah.
You want to talk to them about that?
Sure.
Okay. Why
Would
don't we
you
do that?
want to do it
Do you,
paperwork
can you
now, or
give
do you
me
want to wait? A write-up?
Here's
Can
the
you
stuff.
give me a write-up for
No,
it?
here's the stuff. Take that.
Well,
Okay.
how long does it take to, let's think on it a little bit. Well, you're not gonna vote on it today.
We're not voting on the
Okay,
budget. She's
fine.
going to go in
Just
and talk to
explore it. Fine.
FinCom about it and come back.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. Next, IAC, the Insurance
Advisory
Committee. We,
They need a retiree.
we need a retiree.
But I
So,
just got an email tonight from Dave Goulding, who said he thought Peggy would be a good choice, but I put some names there.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce is also retired.
Oh, true. He was just saying that George was another name that Dennis had thrown out, but that George is a retiree from Tohoto,
Yeah.
so that would put 2 teachers on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Bruce, we didn't.
Bruce or Duncan.
Yeah, he mentioned Duncan.
yeah, I would say ask,
Who else is retired?
and you said Peggy.
Yeah.
Peggy.
I think that, see if there's any interest in any of the 3
Ask
of
all
those.
3 of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
That makes sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. And then we have a pipeline a request for reimbursements. Marion McLeod, who's on our advisory committee for the pipeline, wanted to attend a portion of the MACC workshop this morning on the pipeline. The fee is potentially $125, so this would come out of Selectmen's expenses. I don't really have a problem with that. She's put in a lot of hours, and she brings stuff. I mean, if she learns something, I'm sure that she'll bring it to us and talk to us about it.
Do you ever go to this conference, Walter?
Yeah, I've been to it a few times, and I've gotten a lot out of it. I think there is somebody from the commission going. We're going to talk about it Wednesday night, but, you know, she's focused on this thing, and she's done a lot of work.
And there is the section here is, there are numerous, I'll read it, the numerous natural gas pipelines being proposed from Massachusetts that are before FERC. The workshop will take a look at techniques of gas pipeline construction, potential impacts on wetlands and open space, provide information on the role of conservation commissions under the Wetland Protection Act and local wetland bylaws in permitting, and issues of state and federal preemption, and the role that Mass DEP intends to play in the permitting process. So it sounds like, I mean, if they've even got some decent materials, that send somebody and pay $125 to come back with those materials is a good deal as far as I'm concerned.
She would be our expert on that, you know. She's,
okay, so...
At this point, she would just have to pay, and then she'd get reimbursed
yeah,
in
yeah.
the next cycle.
So why don't we take a vote to indicate our willingness to reimburse her? A motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments, questions, discussion? All right, hearing none, take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We talked, in the second section now, we talked about board availability for community compact. Devon's Dispatch Regional Administrative Board meeting. I, again, am out of town on the 2nd. I'm in New York.
Even if I could do it, what could I, you know, what is there that a selectman can contribute to it if they're...
Well, you've gone.
You've gone to them.
Well, I think, first of all, you need continuity, because like last month, they did this GPS for police cars with one vendor, and this month, they're gonna do another one, is my understanding. Really, because we don't actually have a vote there, it's just a matter of sitting and kind of listening and hearing about how Bolton's going along. It's really just kind of an observational.
Yeah, I won't go with that.
Are you available? Do you want to go?
I can go.
You don't have to if you, I mean,
That's another thing that's on Devon's, which is the touching Harvard. If you want, I could go to that, take notes, and bring the word back.
What time of the day is it?
It's at 9:30.
Yes.
It takes about, well, it takes half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back, and I think I got back at 11 last time. So it takes up most of a morning.
Well, just listening to you, I mean, I think it's, if we're not contributing, and our chief is going to be there, right?
No.
No.
This
Oh,
is
no.
for administrators.
Oh,
This is for administrators.
okay.
Until we become, well, so Bolton is probably gonna end up actually being somewhat early. I think they're thinking that their whole dispatch will be moved over in April, maybe May. And then the whole work on Berlin will start.
Yeah.
So you do kind of get an update on where you are, but the chief has his own. The chiefs have their own meeting.
Yeah.
I think because we don't have a town administrator, that the positions of a selectman are somewhat different from if you were a town administrator. Because if you were a town administrator, you'd be more interested in this GPS system, where I would think that we would let Tom do the majority of the work and then come in and present it, whatever he thought was the best system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Okay, and CMRPC Traffic County Program request for additional count locations.
So I looked at that chart that they had, and I couldn't figure out where they were actually going to be doing it. It had a, of course, I was looking at it on my phone.
It was like a spreadsheet.
Yeah, there was a spreadsheet with counts and places and
Okay. Well, I mean, when I'm looking at this, it says the municipality, it says the street, highway, the location, South Ball Hill Road at Northborough Town Line, Boylston Road at Clinton Town Line. And these are the dates on which they did it.
previous years.
Yes.
So is this, they're going to put all these out again, or they're request?
I don't know.
That's what I
I
didn't
was just saying that's what the
understand.
spreadsheet means. Okay. The requests, and I think the planning board put this request together, didn't they? River Road at Marlboro City
okay.
Line, Route 62 under 495, South Street north of the Rotary, South Street south of Linden, Highland Street south of Randall Road, River Road east of Marlboro Road. That's the Hudson side of the Marlboro Road intersection. South Street north of Pleasant Street, and Linden Street west of Route 62.
Well, I would like to see something down at Five Corners on one of those streets. They didn't do anything over in west. So you've got,
By the way, how do you use that more than anybody? What, it seems to me if there was a place for a roundabout,
Oh,
that would
man.
be a place to have it, huh?
yeah, I
That
agree.
in South Berlin near the post office, you know?
Oh,
Right?
oh, don't ruin Union Square.
Union Square, you
All you
think
have to
you're
do is
like,
put a statue of a
There's only
Union
an accident
soldier
away
in the
from-
middle of it, and then people would have to go around on
Right,
Rotary.
right.
You wouldn't have to do anything else.
Right.
That's, okay. Do you want to suggest Route 62 west of Five Corners?
How about east of it? Because it all comes in, it all flows into 60,
Yeah,
well,
that
although it goes up
makes-
Derby
East-
Road and everything.
just over the railroad tracks
Route
or something
62
where you see.
east of, so east of Derby, right?
Yeah,
East of Derby and the railroad tracks, okay?
yeah.
Do
All
you
right.
come out of there during the rush hour?
I try to avoid, I mean, I have to slow down because you never know when when I'm going west. You never know when someone's gonna pull out. They've
Yeah.
tired of sitting there waiting to pull out, so they'll just
Right.
pull out.
And it backs up to Lincoln Road, doesn't it, on?
Well, that was when I knew the economy was not doing well because it no longer backed up. Now it's backing up again, so the economy, my
Oh,
economy indicator is that things are going well.
All right, so I have Route 62 east of Derby and railroad tracks,
Yeah.
okay?
What do they do with these?
Yeah, good.
They put
I mean,
them-
I know we can ask them to do it, but what good is the
Judy,
information?
They put them in this matrix, all right? And let me start with that.
Matrix.
No, it's, no, what happens is, I mean, if there's transportation funding available, if you decide as a matter of redesign of a road and you want to get state funds, you know, this is statistical backup for doing things like that.
It'd be interesting if they put it more in a graph that shows you, like, these are all in the same place from.
At different times, yes.
Yeah, 97, and show you how the
Yeah.
traffic count is increased.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it's possible to get, you know,
Never
get
mind.
them on that,
I
but
don't care
anyway.
that much.
Okay?
Yep.
So we've added that, and then I'll sign it. I take it everybody's okay with that? Mm-hmm. All right. All right, good.
So I have one more thing. Oh, after this.
I haven't asked if you have one more thing yet. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? This is regarding a large stone on the roadside halfway up Walnut Street.
I told him I'd pick it up and get it to his house.
This is, yep, this is from a resident of town, right?
Yep.
He's interested in acquiring a large stone on the side of the road on Walnut Street with the idea of carving it into a figure of some kind. It's about the size of a coffee table with an estimated weight of 250 pounds, unusually shaped. The highway department a few years ago cleared the brush back several feet along that side of the road and placed a line of stones seemingly to demarcate the area. Can I have that stone and somehow transport it to 52 Pleasant Street? I assume it is on town. Is it on town property?
Yeah, why don't I take Keith and go look at it?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
And then, you know, he talked to me about it the other morning, I forgot about it. I've made a note of it here, so I'll talk to Keith and
Okay.
look into it.
I'd say charge him about $1 a pound.
Okay, is that enough? I think he does enough for the town.
Well, okay. All righty, anything else? I had 2 things that I just wanted to, this time I had a couple.
You didn't ask me.
Yeah.
Anything else? And then we'll go to miscellaneous correspondence.
Sure.
All right. In miscellaneous correspondence, there were 2 things. There was a letter February 17th from Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. They said, with respect to the grant application, one is the project title WebJo Co. property.
Yeah,
or
I've answered those.
Oh, you answered
Yeah,
those?
I've taken care of all
Okay,
that.
so those are done. All right, I just wanted to be sure. Great. And I presume we have not heard back from Copeland and Page on whether that the Dunkin' Donuts.
Joel's out until March 10th, and that attorney took her foot off the gas pedal. Do we want to ask another attorney to get involved, to give an answer on that citizen's petition
When do we have to finalize the,
warrant?
yeah,
It would be after Joel returns.
okay,
probably.
then let's do it. I mean, that's
Okay.
really the
Yeah.
the key
Originally, it was
date.
that Dunkin' Donuts was going to go in front of the planning
Yeah,
board.
but now
that
that's,
fell apart,
that
so-
train's left the station, so, okay. So you'll take care of, or
Yeah,
have taken
yeah,
care of that,
I
whatever.
have taken care of
All
it.
right,
I'll just double check with Ashley as I get.
anything
B,
else?
so, the confirmation of the posting, so you got onto,
Yes. The Central Register.
Central Register and
Goods
posted
services
it.
posting, yes.
Okay. And
What
have
are
you-
you talking about?
The fire chief search.
Oh, yes, okay,
Have
good.
you heard it? Oh, so it's not gonna actually get posted until
March 7th.
March 7th?
Correct, and so we bumped out the return date to March 24th, because it has to be up for at least 14 days.
Okay.
So it was originally gonna be, the way that it was put in front of you, March 10th, that wouldn't have worked, so we just, if that was okay, moved it out.
And are you also posting it in,
On Facebook, which also went onto the town's website. I did not advertise that in the newspaper, I didn't have your permission to. Do you want it to be advertised in the newspaper, or is there a point?
I think maybe
MMA?
MMA.
Well, to search for an interim chief, that cost $150, I mean, I could do that.
Well, this is our.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want it up on MMA?
I think so.
Sure.
Okay.
You should ask the fire chief if it's worth putting it on the fire.
F-cam.
Yeah.
I
I
think-
think we want to cast as wide a net as we can,
Yeah, absolutely.
except maybe not to like, where'd we get all those applications from? Down in someplace out of the country for.
Well, that was because it got up in Monster.
Yeah.
This doesn't go into the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, correct? This advertisement?
I don't think so.
I would for a firm.
That wouldn't be much of a catchment area.
No.
No. And I don't think I want to put it on Monster.
No, but that's why you got some
Yeah.
far-flung applications for interim chief.
Okay,
That was all I had.
all right, and I'll just do this as a public service announcement in the miscellaneous correspondence. We had notification of a rabies clinic sponsored by the Neshoba Board of Health. It will be held on Saturday, the 26th of March, from 8:30 to 10 a.m. at the Highway Barn at 103 Carter.
You put that on.
It's
Facebook.
cash only, and You have to bring a copy of the previous rabies certificate. Cats have to be brought in cages or closed boxes and during the last half of the clinic. We're going to put something online?
It's already on Facebook.
Okay, it's already on Facebook.
Eloise has a sign too that thinks she'll be doing dog licenses at the same
Okay.
time at the same
And
location.
the clerk may be doing dog licenses as well, but I thought I'd just put that out there. Anything else?
What's our 495 partnership? I just wanted to
Oh.
see it physical printed because I
We
think I was a little annoyed looking at this because they don't have anything in here about solar.
They-
all
they-
right.
They do have workshops about solar. They have energy.
I know, but this whole thing
one.
appeared to me to be all oil and gas.
Oh,
I don't know, I can't.
You can take that with you if you want to read through it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Write them a letter,
Yeah.
and tell them what they're feeling.
we get a lot of email from them, probably once a week with different conferences and workshops that they're holding. I don't even know if geographically that doesn't make more sense than the Neshoba Valley Working TA Group or both. But that's asking for budgeting for the coming year, putting $500 in to consider membership in this group.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Okay?
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope.
So we will see you next Monday, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll be,
Yeah.
okay, I was gonna, so I wish you bon voyage next Monday.
Oh, thank you.
All right. All right, hearing nothing, I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.